Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Liam declines to defend Grace's falsehoods. After all this time, Liam Spencer will finally find out the truth about his cancer diagnosis. Finally, John Finn Finnegan has come to the conclusion that Liam's cancer story was a complex fabrication. Grace Buckingham must be honest with Liam, according to Finn. Is Liam going to keep her secret? Spencer, Liam thought Grace Buckingham was lying. After Luna Nozawa killed 2 people, Liam confronted his father about his choice to release her from prison and release her to the public in Los Angeles. Liam and Bill battled so violently that after being told to leave, Liam fell and banged his head inside Bill's living room, which caused him to get lightheaded and even faint. After that, Liam went outside, but Steffi Forrester found him unconscious in the driveway. Grace began her deceit when Steffi phoned an ambulance to take him to the hospital. Finn, Liam, and Steffi were told that Liam had an incurable malignancy. Grace Buckingham uses force to get what she wants. In order to help Liam and extend his life, Grace offered him medications. But rather than feeling better, Liam felt worse. Liam didn't want to have a lower quality of life than what he already had, but Grace persisted in pressuring Finn to take his medication. When it came to promoting that drug, Grace started acting utterly irrationally. Finn prevented Liam from dying from his gunshot wound after he was shot. Following his operation, Liam was recovering nicely, so Grace recommended that they attempt an experimental procedure to preserve Liam's life. After that, Grace let Liam go and asked Bill to drive him to a different facility, where he had an unapproved operation. $1 million was spent on the procedure. Will Grace Buckingham be covered by Liam Spencer? In order to keep Grace out of trouble, Finn will inform Liam that she expects them to keep this quiet. Finn might even consent to anything Liam requests. Will Liam reveal the truth or will he cover for Grace? Liam might demand that Grace pay for her actions and refuse to keep this a secret. Will Liam demand payment from Grace for the suffering he and his family endured? Since his father was the one from whom Grace took the money, Liam might want to notify him first. But Grace shouldn't be permitted to continue working while harming another person. Maybe Liam will demand that Grace be imprisoned for her deception. Will Grace ultimately foot the bill for this lengthy tale? How will Grace manage being incarcerated and not working? Will Grace be attended to by Bill first? Bill's indignation over Liam's false illness, hope and the risk of engagement. Liam Spencer's tumor fake-out will cause Bill Spencer to lose his temper, endangering Hope Logan and Carter Walton's engagement. John Finn Finnegan will uncover Grace Buckingham's scam during the week of August 4th to 8th, forcing her to tell Liam the truth. He will be astounded as Hope Logan when Grace admits to fabricating Liam's tumor and this miraculous operation. Grace will still have to deal with the consequences of her choices, even though she may complain that her debt has put her in a difficult situation. According to B&B spoilers, Brooke Logan and Nick Marone's boat journey in Italy will end badly when she is pushed into the ocean. Their impending reunion will be sparked by Ridge Forrester diving in as well and dragging Brooke to safety. Ridge will come to understand that Brooke, not Taylor Hayes, still has his heart. It will be time to return to Los Angeles and face reality during the week of August 11th to 15th. Will Ridge sit down with his present fiancée to deliver some terrible news? Ridge can't be with Brooke unless he breaks up with Taylor. Of course, there's also a chance that Taylor might learn more shockingly. Without a tabloid picture of Ridge kissing Brooke after saving her or anything similar might be shown. In any case, Ridge and Taylor won't be enjoying the happy ending she had hoped for because their wedding will be called off shortly. Bill, on the other hand, will probably receive updates regarding Grace's brain cancer fraud. Bill may lose his temper and demand legal repercussions because Grace caused him to send $1 million and endure a lot of mental distress. Hope and Carter's future may be in peril during the week of August 18th to 22nd because Daphne Rose will be around to stir things up. Daphne will be in conflict with Hope since she will be flirting with Carter and hoping to get her own opportunity with him. Will Carter eventually use Daphne to betray Hope? If that's the case, Hope might eventually be pushed back toward Liam romantically. In the meantime, Brooke and Ridge have a strong chance of reviving their own marriage preparations. Ridge might decide to remarry Brooke instead of Taylor, and he might even make a lifelong commitment to do so. Liam Spencer stood rigidly near the window, the Los Angeles skyline a blur beyond the glass, his reflection a pale, haunted echo of the man who had walked into Bill Spencer's mansion weeks ago, fueled by righteous fury over Luna's release. That confrontation, the dizzying fall, the blow to his head, they felt like ancient history now, mere preludes to the devastating symphony of deception orchestrated by Grace Buckingham. Finn's words, delivered with a potent mixture of professional horror and empathetic outrage, still reverberated in Liam's skull, shattering the fragile reality Grace had meticulously constructed. There was no tumor. No inoperable death sentence. The pills were poison masquerading as salvation. The surgery was a grotesque, million-dollar farce. The diagnosis that had stolen his breath, his future, his peace, forcing agonizing goodbyes and casting a perpetual shadow over every moment with Steffi, with Kelly, with his life, it was all a lie. A monstrous, elaborate lie. And Grace, the woman who had inserted herself into his vulnerability with the calculated precision of a predator, who had played the concerned confidant while pushing fake medication that worsened his suffering, who had exploited his terror to manipulate Finn and orchestrate an illegal, dangerous procedure funded by money stolen from his own father, she expected him to be complicit in her cover-up. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it choked him, a physical sensation tightening his throat, hotter and more corrosive than any nausea induced by her fraudulent pills. Every memory flooded back with brutal clarity, each detail now stained with the venom of Grace's manipulation. The terrifying dizziness in Bill's living room, not just from the argument and fall, but perhaps amplified by the psychological seeds she'd already begun to plant. Collapsing in the driveway, Steffi's frantic face the last thing he saw before darkness, his vulnerability laid bare. Then, the crushing blow delivered in the cold, impersonal hospital room, inoperable. The word had echoed like a death knell. Grace had swooped in then, the self-appointed savior with her mysterious, life-prolonging pills. He remembered the desperate hope warring with skepticism as he swallowed them, only to feel worse, his body rebelling against the unknown toxins. He recalled her unnerving persistence, her almost manic insistence that he keep taking the medication, overriding his desire for quality over a quantity of life defined by suffering. Her irrational behavior wasn't concern, it was the panic of a puppeteer whose strings were tangling. Even after Deacon's bullet tore through him, a real brush with death where Finn's genuine skill had saved him, Grace hadn't relented. As he lay recovering from actual trauma, she'd preyed on the lingering fear of the fictional tumor, whispering promises of an experimental, unapproved surgery. The clandestine transfer, the phantom operation costing Bill $1 million, it wasn't a desperate gamble for life, it was a calculated act of medical fraud and grand theft, performed on a man she'd psychologically broken. She hadn't saved him, she'd imprisoned him in a nightmare of her own design, profiting from his despair and his father's wealth. Now, Finn stood before him, the bearer of this unbearable truth, visibly wrestling with his own ethical duty and the fallout. His revelation that Grace expected their silence, demanded it to save her career, her freedom, landed like a physical blow. "She thinks we'll keep quiet, Liam," Finn had said, his voice heavy. "She expects you to protect her after this." The implication hung in the air. Finn, bound by his oath but disgusted by Grace's actions, might even reluctantly acquiesce to Liam's decision, whatever it was. But in that suspended moment, staring into the abyss of Grace's monstrous deceit, Liam Spencer felt not an ounce of hesitation, not a flicker of the compassion Grace had so grotesquely manipulated. The carefully constructed dam holding back a tsunami of rage, humiliation, and profound violation shattered utterly. Cover for her? Protect the architect of his torment? The woman who had made him confront his mortality under false pretenses, who had forced Steffi and his children to endure the agony of anticipatory grief, who had poisoned his body and stolen $1 million from his father under the vilest pretense imaginable? The very notion was an obscenity. A firestorm ignited within him, burning away the last vestiges of shock, leaving only pure, incandescent fury and an unshakable resolve. Grace Buckingham didn't deserve protection, she deserved annihilation. She deserved to feel the full, crushing weight of the consequences she had so callously inflicted on him and everyone who loved him. The path of least resistance, silence, complicity, was a path paved with further betrayal, not just of himself, but of Finn, of Steffi, of Bill, and of any future victim Grace might ensnare if left unchecked. His silence would be her victory, a continuation of her cruel game. He would not be her pawn any longer. The decision crystallized with terrifying clarity, sharp and cold as surgical steel. He refused. He absolutely, unequivocally refused to cover for Grace Buckingham's lies. This charade ended now. The thought of Bill, always volatile, always fiercely protective in his own abrasive way, learning the truth was paramount. Grace hadn't just lied to Liam, she had stolen from Bill Spencer. $1 million extracted under the most despicable false pretenses imaginable, exploiting a father's fear for his son's life. Bill's reaction would be volcanic, a force of nature unto itself, and Liam needed to control that narrative, to deliver the truth himself before Grace could spin another web or Bill discovered it through more destructive means. But beyond Bill, beyond the money, lay the greater imperative, accountability. Grace Buckingham, wielding her position and manipulative skills like weapons, could not be allowed to remain in a hospital, near vulnerable patients. She was a predator disguised as a healer. Her license, her career, her freedom, she had forfeited them all the moment she concocted this vile scheme. Liam would see her exposed. He would ensure the medical board, the hospital administrators, and crucially, the police, knew every sordid detail. He would testify, provide evidence, relive the nightmare if that's what it took. Prison wasn't just a possibility, it was the only fitting consequence for the depth of her calculated cruelty. He envisioned her stripped of her lab coat, stripped of her carefully constructed facade of competence and care, facing the stark reality of a cell. How would the imperious Grace Buckingham handle the loss of control, the loss of status, the grim monotony of incarceration? The thought brought no joy, only a grim sense of necessary justice. And Bill? Liam knew his father well enough. Bill Spencer wouldn't wait for the courts. His retribution would be swift, brutal, and entirely extra-legal. Liam felt a flicker of grim anticipation mixed with a sliver of dread. Bill confronting Grace would be explosive, potentially dangerous. But even that potential storm couldn't deter him. Grace had lit this fuse, she would burn in the explosion. Liam Spencer, the man who had been brought to his knees by a lie, straightened his shoulders, the ghost of a doomed patient replaced by the steely resolve of a survivor demanding justice. He turned from the window, meeting Finn's gaze, his own eyes blazing with a clarity absent for weeks. No, he stated, his voice low but vibrating with absolute conviction, cutting through the sterile silence like a blade. I won't cover for her. Not for a second. It's time Grace Buckingham faced the truth she's been running from. It's time she paid for everything. The silence that followed wasn't passive, it was the charged calm before the inevitable, righteous storm. Liam's refusal wasn't just a decision, it was a declaration of war on the lie that had consumed him, and Grace Buckingham was squarely in the crosshairs. The path to healing, for Liam and his fractured family, began not with silence, but with the deafening roar of truth. Grace Buckingham's cruel cancer scam. The meticulously constructed lie about Liam Spencer's terminal brain tumor, a desperate ploy born of Grace's crushing debt, finally shatters under the relentless scrutiny of John Finnegan. Finn, piecing together inconsistencies with a doctor's intuition and a growing sense of moral outrage, confronts Grace, applying unyielding pressure for her to confess her monstrous deception before the damage becomes truly irreparable. Cornered and stripped of her manipulative facade, Grace breaks, her tearful confession landing like a physical blow on Liam and Hope Logan. The revelation that Liam's agonizing diagnosis, the harrowing experimental procedure, and his subsequent miraculous recovery were nothing but an elaborate, heartless fiction leaves them reeling in a vortex of shock, betrayal, and profound emotional whiplash. While Grace may attempt to mitigate her culpability, painting herself as a victim backed into a corner by insurmountable financial woes, her pathetic justifications ring hollow against the sheer cruelty of her actions, exploiting a father's love for his son, manipulating Liam's deepest fears, and weaponizing Hope's compassion and enduring, complex feelings for her ex-husband. The emotional carnage is immediate and vast, but the most volatile reaction is yet to come, simmering across the ocean and poised to explode upon Bill Spencer's inevitable discovery. Bill, who wired a staggering $1 million in a desperate bid to save his son's life, money extracted under the most despicable false pretenses, and endured profound emotional torment believing Liam was dying, represents a force of nature about to be unleashed. His fury won't be contained by mere shouting, it will be a cold, calculated tempest demanding nothing less than Grace's utter ruin through the full force of legal retribution. He will see her prosecuted, bankrupted, and imprisoned, viewing her scam not just as a financial theft, but as a violent assault on his family and his own vulnerable heart, making his wrath a central, driving force in the weeks ahead. Simultaneously, continents away in Italy, another fateful drama unfolds, destined to send shockwaves back to Los Angeles. Brooke Logan's ill-advised, nostalgia-tinged boat excursion with her ex-husband, Nick Marone, takes a perilous turn, culminating in her being thrown violently into the water. In a moment charged with instinct and buried history, Ridge Forrester, witnessing the crisis, doesn't hesitate. He plunges into the water, becoming Brooke's rescuer, pulling her to safety in a visceral, life-altering act. This soggy climax isn't just about physical salvation, it's the catalyst Ridge never knew he needed. Holding Brooke, feeling the primal surge of protectiveness and the undeniable, electric connection that has defined decades of their turbulent lives, Ridge experiences a blinding epiphany. The carefully constructed life he was building with the stable, understanding Taylor Hayes suddenly feels like a comfortable illusion. In that drenched, adrenaline-fueled moment, clarity strikes. His heart, despite all efforts, all promises, all logic, irrevocably belongs to Brooke. This rescue shatters the precarious peace he'd found with Taylor, forcing a confrontation with his deepest, most inescapable truth. The implications are immediate and monumental. Ridge cannot pursue this reawakened passion for Brooke while pledged to Taylor. Honesty, however brutal, becomes unavoidable. The week of August 11th to 15th thrusts everyone back into the harsh light of Los Angeles reality, where Ridge must face the agonizing task of sitting Taylor down to deliver the soul-crushing news that their engagement is over, that his heart led him back to Brooke. Or, perhaps, fate and the relentless LA paparazzi will intervene in a more spectacularly painful fashion, a candid tabloid photo capturing the raw intensity of Ridge holding a vulnerable Brooke after the rescue, or even a kiss born of relief and rekindled passion, splashed across the front pages for Taylor to discover publicly. Regardless of the method, the outcome is tragically inevitable. Ridge and Taylor's wedding plans will be irrevocably cancelled, shattering Taylor's hopes for a lasting, happy ending and setting the stage for a renewed, yet inevitably complex, bridge reunion. Brooke and Ridge, drawn together once more by fate and undeniable chemistry, will likely begin whispering promises of forever, again, with Ridge undoubtedly vowing that this time, it's truly final, blissfully ignoring the cyclical nature of their legendary romance. Meanwhile, back in LA, the tremors from Grace's confession and the looming specter of Bill's vengeance create fertile ground for new crises, particularly threatening the fledgling engagement between Hope Logan and Carter Walton. Hope, already emotionally battered by the revelation of Liam's fake illness, a trauma that forced her to confront buried feelings and the fragility of life, now faces a different kind of instability. Carter, a beacon of stability and devotion, finds his loyalty tested by the persistent, unwelcome presence of Daphne Rose. The week of August 18th to 22nd sees Daphne firmly entrenched in her role as pot stirrer extraordinaire. Emboldened by her lingering feelings for Carter and sensing potential vulnerability in the wake of the Liam/Hope emotional fallout, Daphne steps up her campaign. Her flirting becomes bolder, more calculated, designed to remind Carter of their potent past connection and to subtly undermine Hope's place in his life. She positions herself as the understanding confidant, the exciting alternative to Hope's current emotional turmoil and complicated history. This deliberate provocation inevitably sparks clashes between Daphne and Hope, transforming Carter's office and social spaces into tense battlegrounds. The central, agonizing question becomes, will Carter's resolve crumble? Will the pressure, the nostalgia Daphne evokes, and the inherent challenges of integrating into Hope's complex world, especially with Liam now a constant, emotionally raw presence, lead him to betray Hope's trust? A momentary lapse, a kiss born of confusion or misplaced comfort, could fracture their engagement irreparably. Such a betrayal would not only devastate Hope but could also create a powerful vacuum, potentially pushing her back towards the familiar, albeit tumultuous, harbor of Liam Spencer. Liam, himself reeling from the scam and likely seeing Hope's pain, would be primed to offer solace and rekindle Lope dreams, especially if he perceives Carter as having failed her in her time of need. The risk to Hope and Carter's future is palpable and immediate, their hard-won happiness dangling precariously over the chasm opened by Daphne's machinations and the residual shockwaves of Grace's lies. Thus, the canvas of Los Angeles is painted with volatile emotions. Bill Spencer's cold, furious quest for justice against Grace is a ticking time bomb set to detonate amidst the ruins of her deception. Hope and Carter's hopeful engagement faces its most insidious threat yet from within, as Daphne relentlessly exploits any perceived crack, and Brooke and Ridge, propelled by a near tragedy in Italy, stand on the precipice of yet another reunion, ready to reignite their eternal flame while leaving a heartbroken Taylor Hayes in their wake. Each storyline is intricately woven, feeding into the others. Grace's exposure fuels Bill's rage and destabilizes Liam and Hope, making Hope potentially more vulnerable to Carter's potential misstep or a Liam resurgence. Ridge's abandonment of Taylor creates another vortex of pain, while his reunion with Brooke adds another layer of familial complexity to the already fraught dynamic surrounding Hope, Liam, and Steffi. The coming weeks are less about calm resolution and more about the explosive collision of consequences, for medical lies, for romantic choices, and for the dangerous games people play with hearts and lives. Bill's fury will demand payment, Hope and Carter's love will face its ultimate test, and the perennial saga of Brooke and Ridge promises another tumultuous chapter, proving that on The Bold and the Beautiful, security is an illusion, and the only constant is the dramatic unraveling of carefully laid plans.